33 and 45 RPM records require a phono stage to equalize and amplify the signal picked up from the grooves by the phono cartridge needle. Equalization, or EQ, simply means modifying the frequency response of a music signal. The phono stage can be a standalone unit or built into another amplifier, such as a preamp. In 1954, the Recording Industry Association of America, RIAA, created a specification that modified the frequency response of audio recordings before they were turned into records. The signal levels of low frequencies were to be reduced, while signal levels of high frequencies were to be boosted. This enabled reduction of the width of the record groove when recording low frequencies, allowing more music to be placed onto a record. Boosting the level of high frequencies also boosted the noise level embedded within the music. Upon playback, reverse equalization would be applied by the phono stage to reduce noise and restore the original music signal. Any inaccuracy in the playback equalization means music on the record is not a perfect replica of the original recording. This is a form of distortion, although it would be impossible for a typical listener to detect, since he or she has no knowledge of how the original recording is supposed to sound. RIAA playback equalization accuracy is a prerequisite for faithful reproduction of music on a record, but does not guarantee that one phono preamp will sound better than another. That will depend on other factors such as circuit design, quality of components, construction techniques, and so forth. I will be using a Dayton Audio IM-M6 calibrated microphone, which looks like this, with my smartphone to measure the sound level at each test frequency. It comes with a calibration file that shows its exact frequency response relative to 0 dB at 1000 Hz. These values will be used to derive an adjustment factor for each test frequency. I will be using a Falcon Acoustic LS35A DIY speaker to output the test tones from the phono stage. No loudspeaker has perfectly flat frequency response, so I will perform a calibration process to determine the sound level at each test frequency relative to the sound level at 1000 Hz. The results will be used to derive another adjustment factor. I call the sum of both adjustment factors the correction factor. This value will be added to the measured sound level of the phono stage being evaluated. The adjusted measurements should be an accurate estimate of the RIAA equalization of the phono stage. To calibrate the frequency response of my loudspeakers, I'm going to use a signal generator on my tablet to feed a signal to the line input of my preamplifier, and I'll set a reference level at 1000 Hertz, and then I will go back and measure the sound levels at the various test frequencies I'm going to use for the RIAA equalization evaluations. Those frequencies will be 100 Hertz, 200, 500, 1000, 2000, 5000, and 10,000 Hertz. Here are the results of the frequency response calibration for the IM-M6 calibrated microphone, as well as for the loudspeaker. So from the calibration file that's included with the microphone, at 100 Hertz, the microphone has a response of +1 dB, over the response at 1000 Hz. At 200 Hz, this becomes 0.6 dB. 500 Hz, it's plus 1.1. 2000 Hz, it's plus 0.6. 5000 minus 0.6. And at 10,000 plus 3.2. So the adjustment factor would be the negative of these values, namely minus 1, minus 0.6, and so forth. For the Falcon Acoustic LS35A loudspeaker response, I set a reference voltage at 1000 Hz of minus 53 dB. Then I measured the level at 100 Hz, which was minus 55, 200 Hz, minus 48, 500 Hz, minus 56, 2000 Hz, minus 51, 5000 Hz, minus 56, and 10,000 Hz, minus 57. Then I adjusted these levels so that it's relative to 1000 Hz, with 1000 Hz being 0. So the frequency response at 100 Hz becomes minus 2, 200 Hz plus 5, and so forth. So the adjustment factor is the inverse of these values, which is plus 2 at 100 Hz, minus 5 at 200 Hz, plus 3 at 500 Hz, 0 at 1000, minus 2 at 2000 Hz, plus 3 at 5000 Hz, and plus 4 at 10,000 Hz. The sum of both adjustment factors then becomes the correction factor that I would apply to the measurement readings from each phono stage. So at 100 Hz, the adjustment factor is plus 1. At 200 Hz, it's minus 5.6. At 500 Hz, it's plus 1.9. 1000 Hz, it's 0. 2000 Hz, it's minus 2.6. 5000 Hz, it's plus 3.6. At 10,000 Hz, it's plus 0.8. The Elekit TU-8500 is a Japanese preamplifier with 3 switchable line inputs and a built-in moving magnet, moving coil phono stage. It uses passive components to perform the RIAA playback equalization and solid-state op-amps to amplify the signal from moving magnet and moving coil cartridges. It uses 2 12AX7 tubes to further amplify the signal to line level voltages. This comes as a DIY kit and costs around US $600, excluding tubes. So to measure the RIAA frequency response of my Elekit TU-8500 preamp, I'm going to take the signal from the tablet and feed it directly into the moving magnet input of the phono stage. The RIAA specification is from tables on the internet, plus 13.1 at 100 Hz, plus 8.2 at 200 Hz, plus 2.6 at 500 Hz, 0 at 1000, minus 2.9 at 2000 Hz, minus 8.2 at 5000 Hz, minus 13.7 at 10,000 Hz. Sound levels at each frequency for the Elekit TU-8500 was minus 45 at 100 Hz, minus 43 at 200 Hz, minus 57 at 500 Hz, minus 57 at 1000, minus 57 at 2000, minus 67 at 5000, and minus 73 at 10,000, plus or minus 2 dB. There was some level variation at 10,000 Hz. Relative to 1000 Hz, this becomes plus 12, plus 14, 0, 0, 0, minus 10, and minus 16. Adding the correction factor, this becomes plus 13, plus 8.4, plus 1.9, 0, minus 2.6, minus 6.4, and minus 15.2. The deviation from spec is therefore the difference from the corrected value and the RIAA specification. So the deviation at 100 Hz is minus 0.1, at 200 Hz it's plus 0.2, 500 Hz it's minus 0.7, 1000 Hz is 0, at 2000 it's plus 0.3, at 5000 it's plus 1.8, and at 10,000 it's minus 1.5. These are certainly within the measurement error, very good values. The Sunvalley Audio SV-EQ1616D is a Japanese standalone tube phono equalizer. It uses passive components to perform RIAA playback equalization and a single 12AX7 dual triode tube per channel to amplify the signal from moving magnet and moving coil cartridges. Another 12AX7 tube further amplifies the left and right channels to reach line level voltages required by a power amplifier. It can support 2 moving magnet or moving coil cartridges and can provide equalization that meets specifications created before 1954. It costs around US $900 excluding tubes in kit form, and can also be purchased assembled and tested by the factory for about US $2,000 including tubes. This phono stage received a Class A rating in Stereophile magazine's recommended components list. This is 100 Hz, minus 41 dB. This is 200 Hz, minus 38 dB. 500 Hz, minus 54 dB. 1000 Hz, minus 53 dB, 2000 Hz, minus 52 dB, 5000 Hz, minus 64 dB, 10,000 Hz, minus 72 dB. At 100 Hz, the measured value was minus 41 dB, 200 Hz minus 38 dB, 500 Hz minus 54 dB, 1000 Hz minus 53 dB, 2000 Hz minus 52 dB, 5000 Hz minus 63 dB, 10,000 Hz minus 67 dB. Relative to 0 at 1000 Hz, this becomes plus 12 at 100 Hz, plus 15 at 200 Hz, minus 1 at 500 Hz, obviously 0 at 1000 Hz, plus 1 at 2000, minus 10 at 5000, and minus 14 at 10,000. Adding in the correction factor, this becomes plus 13, plus 9.4 at 200, plus 0.9, 0 at 1000, minus 1.6 at 2000, minus 6.4, and minus 13.2 at 10,000. Deviation from spec at 100 Hz is minus 0.1, 200 Hz plus 1.2, 500 Hz minus 1.7, 1000 Hz 0, 2000 Hz plus 1.3, 5000 Hz plus 1.8, 10,000 Hz plus 0.5. So again, within the measurement error, the Sunvalley EQ1616D RIAA equalization is very close to specification. The EQ1616D has adjustable RIAA roll-off by means of a potentiometer. So there is some minor variation adjustment to increase or decrease the roll-off frequencies. So it's quite possible that the deviations can be further reduced. Conclusion. The Elekit and Sunvalley Phono stages meet the RIAA playback specification. If the sound from your record playback system sounds inferior to your digital playback system, whether it's a music streamer, DAC, or CD player, I suggest you consider upgrading the Phono stage before upgrading your turntable or cartridge.